Hello everybody, Haj here. In this video we're going to get deeper into Maya, a little bit more about the capabilities of Maya. So let's get into it. So we're going to start getting a little bit more familiar with Maya. So with Maya, whenever you start a new scene, you can also go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Sphere, Option Box. If you want to create something more custom, and then remember also Control A will bring up your properties. One thing with Maya is say you do manipulate this and then you right click, adjust the faces, change the radius with holding down B, and now you've done something like this. If you go back to your attributes and you want to adjust this now, you see how it gets kind of crazy. That's because there's a thing with the history. So the history isn't really retained because you manipulated the sphere. So what I find myself constantly doing is Alt Shift D, and if we go into, you see right down here, it actually tells us undo delete history. So when I did Alt Shift D, that command is basically echoed right down here in the bottom right. So if you actually want to go to your commands, you just have to go here to this little window right here, click, and you can see everything that we've done thus far is here. But like say if we do manipulate this, you see select dash R P sphere. This is kind of telling us what we're doing. If we move it, you see it says it's moved. So if I go here and I want to kind of like commit all these changes, you can go to edit, delete by type, history, or the shortcut Alt Shift D. So I'm constantly doing this just to kind of like commit all my changes, and it keeps the scene lighter. Maya can get kind of heavy sometimes and bogged down. Go to object mode and let's delete this. Now if you want to import your own model, you can do that. So go to file, import, and you can import an FBX OBJ. So this is an old model that I have that I'm importing, and if I tweak this, let's say I want the head to be different, I can always go here, hold down B, and that's basically adjusts our radius. Then let go of B. You can adjust everything here as you see fit. Now, there's a lot we can do in Maya as far as animation, but I'm just kind of going to show you like if we did want to create a basic turntable with keyframes. There's always different ways to make a keyframe. So I can always, go down here, set my frames from 0 to say 200, that's fine. I can select my geometry, click S, and what S does is it creates keyframe on everything. So if you see here to the right, let me undo that keyframe. Let's just zero this out. So we'll go up here to modify, freeze transformations. You'll see everything's down to 0. So we're zeroed out. Also, another quick tip, if you ever do move your model, say over here, you can always just go up here and hit 0, 0, 0, just to bring you back to your origin. So a couple of things to be kind of conscious of in Maya, like that I use a lot. If I want to isolate something, so say I bring in another sphere, and I have this sphere here, and I have, this is called a write-in here. If I wanted to hide the sphere, I can always press H, whatever selected is hidden, and undo that. You see the backdrop was actually selected there, but I would just select the sphere, I click H, and I can hide it. if I want to hide the right in H. And you can see here in the outliner when I do hide the sphere, it's kind of grayed out. Alt H will hide what's not selected. So it's good to get in the habit of kind of learning these hotkeys. So we can always click H and hide our geometry, Control Shift H, unhide it. And if we want to isolate it, the hotkey for that is Control 1. Now what that does is just kind of, you can go Control 1 and just kind of, you know, go back, unhide our sphere, Control 1. So that kind of just isolates it. It doesn't really hide it from our outliner. Just kind of isolates, say I just wanted to work on this specific sphere. I would say Control 1, isolate it. If I want to hide it until I want to unhide it again and just kind of get it out of the viewport, I just click H and I can just keep working here. And then whenever I want it back, I can just bring it back. So say like if we did have this environment, this backdrop, and we just wanted to hide this sphere, we can always do it that way. So you see here that we have our geometry, it's all combined. If we right click on our head, we can go to face. And again, there's ways we can actually quickly go to our face mode. Like if you right click and go down, go face, but if you kind of quick whip going down, you can go to face mode. So say edges up, left is vertex, down is face. So if we quick whip and go right click up, we go to our edges. If we quick whip and go to the left, it goes to vertex. Quick whip down goes to face. So that's just a quick way of going to your vertex mode, edge mode, face mode. Double clicking will select the continuous geometry. So you see that we have the bird here, the cat here, the eyes, the teeth, right? Like say we wanted to separate this, well, we could just double click here on the horn, go up here to mesh, and we go to the modeling menu, mesh, separate. You see it's been separated. So now we have, if we quick whip to the diagonal to our object mode, we have our horn, and now we have the rest of our geometry here separate. Now you see here in our outliner, it has actually separated those out into two separate geometries, but then we have all these groups. Remember, you could just always select everything, Alt Shift D, delete our history, and you know, it kind of just cleans everything up, keeps everything light so that there's no history. It's a good habit to get into when you're separating things, combining things, and working in Maya. We just select our head, go to our face mode, select the bird, and our modeling menu, go to mesh, separate, and now our bird is separated. And Alt Shift D, Alt Shift D on all these separate geometries. And now you can see that we have the bird and the rest. So it's good. It's a good habit to kind of organize these. So we have our writing group. We can always shift select these in the outliner, middle mouse click them up, and then drag them into the group so that everything's kind of, just delete this group, just so everything's kind of organized. And get in the habit of like, you know, renaming everything. Keep your naming conventions right when you're working in Maya, especially as your scenes get larger. Kind of want to keep good naming conventions. So you can see the eye. Select our eyes and go to mesh, separate out our eyes. And if we want to keep the eyes as one geometry, we can just select one eyeball on the bird and shift select the other and go to mesh combine. And now we have our eyeballs as its own geometry. We can always parent it underneath the bird, and you can do that by selecting the eyes, shift selecting the bird and clicking P. And what that does is you see it parents these eyes underneath the bird. Now, what that does is if we actually rotate this, you see the eye is parented to the bird. What it still rotates is the same geometry. At the same time, you could still individually select the child, which is the eye, which are the eyes, and rotate them. So you can kind of see how the hierarchy works in Maya. So we have our bird. We do the same with the horn. We can make the cat a child of our horn. You can also do it by middle mouse clicking on the cat and dragging it to the horn. And now you'll see the cat is a child of the horn. And so on and so forth. You can take the bird and make that a child of the cat and create this hierarchy. So if we select the highest level, which is the horn, everything will rotate together. You select the cat, it will rotate by itself. And you can see the base is actually, you move this up, you see the base is still kind of unified with the rest of the writing. So we go to mesh separate, select our base, call this our base. Let's take this all the way outside of our right geometry just so that we keep everything separate. Now you see there's all these extra groups. You can select everything. Be sure to delete your history, and then you can delete any groups that are kind of left over. Call this our cat. And these are kind of good to call, say, our cat group. Just keep the names different. And let's make the bird a child of the cat. You know, so it's a good habit to try to group things together, organize your scenes so that you know where everything is in the outliner, and everything has a name. Names are important. Naming conventions are very important. And then, you know, you can always combine everything back together. Mesh, combine, delete your history, and we're back to where we started. The only difference is right now we have our base, we have our writing, and we have our backdrop. So why would you want to separate these out? Well, if you do go here to what's called the Hypershade, this is kind of where you can add shaders. It's one method of kind of getting into your materials. So if we wanted to create a new Arnold material, which is the render from Maya, the default, you go here to Arnold, go to our AI standard surface material, select that, and you see here we have an AR standard surface. We call this our material writing. Let's go to object mode, right click on that material and assign material to selection. You see the color of the material changed. So if we change this color, you see that now has been applied. So if we want to create another material for the base, we click on the base, and you can actually right click on the base, go down here, assign new material, Arnold. That's another method, standard surface. And you see here, now we have another material. We'll call this one base. Just something very basic just to start with. I mean, this is more of a basics introduction to Maya. So to set a keyframe in Maya is the S key. So if we wanted to say animate this right in, you just the fastest, easiest method of doing it is just hit the S key while it's selected. And you can see here right behind my head that there's this red notch that kind of shows up when you set a keyframe. Also, you'll see here, I just keyframed every attribute, translation, rotation, scale right now by clicking the S key. That's what it does. So if I undo that, I can click my rotate, and I want to animate this section right here. So I'm just going to set a keyframe on my y-axis. And now I'm going to go here to frame 200, and I'm going to rotate this like, I don't know, 360 degrees. And let's right click and key select it here. So now we have turntable. And it's good to kind of organize your keys in this, get in the mindset of animation, because when you key everything, and if you go to your Windows animation editors, graph editor, you're going to see here, this is where our keyframes are. And just to kind of keep your keyframes organized and legible, if I keyframed everything, I click S, see everything is keyframe, you know? But if I only keyframe just the Y, you know, I only have to worry about this one keyframe. So try to get in the habit of keyframing only what you need to keyframe. I see a lot of videos don't really explain that, but it's very important for the graph editor, especially when you get deeper into animation. So you can see here, you can adjust this, you know, to 200, go to 360, to 400. There's a lot of tools here. There's a lot of great plugins here for animation with the graph editor that kind of will help you when you get further into it. So it's good to know about the graph editor when you get more into keying, overshooting, easing in, easing out, and you know, manipulating these keyframes in the graph editor. Yeah, you can always change how the turntable moves. But for now, for beginning, just get in the habit of just setting some keys and, you know, viewing your animation, seeing how long you want the keys to go for. We're at 24 frames a second, you know, you can always go to 30 frames a second. And you can always extend this out to say 500 frames and click and drag all the way to the end. This is kind of like allows you to view how much of your timeline you want to show, and you can shift select and kind of move these keyframes all the way to 500, and now you'll see our animation is slower. So if you do want to view this right here and say that you just want to get a nice little preview of this model at this angle, if you go here to render the current frame, this is where you render for Arnold. You can click play and you will see absolutely nothing shows up. So let's try and add a light. So let's go to create light and let's just put in just directional light so you could see what's happening here. So now you can see that our model is showing up. And if we go here to our directional light and look at its attributes, you can adjust the intensity and press play. And now it's updating. Change the color. As you see fit. If you do want to look at it in the viewport, kind of like you would in Eevee and Blender, you can always click here. And this will kind of give you like start, stop Arnold in the viewport. So this allows us to kind of look at our render frame in the viewport. And it's not, it works, you know, it can bog down the system a little bit, but it's kind of like looking at like a cycles render or something. And this is super basic, but kind of get the idea. So now if we want to select this Rhyton and maybe give it a little bit more of a metal look, we can do that. Change the roughness. Turn off the Arnold render view just while we manipulate. Say we want to take the base, and if you click here under the drop down on the material base in the attribute editor, you can see that, you know, you can actually adjust the material here as well. So we can change it to a matte, change it to a toon shader, change it to a standard surface, back to a standard surface. There's also here a presets button, which will give you like a whole variety of materials. So we can say adjust this to be something like let's just try and make this gold. To get replace all of it, place selected, and now we have a gold material, gold bar. And then here as well, we can also do that. Go to our presets, change this maybe to see jade, how that's looking, or let's see how it looks with gold. And you can see we have something pretty okay for just viewing how we want our model to look. Now you can see the lighting is still very like definitely not lit well, you know, so you can always add two more lights, you know, like right now we just have this directional light. Let's say, like, you know, with lighting, you know, you do want to add like and under Arnold's, since these are Arnold shaders, there's a lot more lights, so we could add like a sky dome light. And right here you can add an HDRI map so that you can get your renders looking more with realistic lighting. Let's hide our directional light. So you just select your sky dome light, go here and add a file. You just put your HDRI map right here under image name. Let's turn off the Arnold renderer and try to turn it back on. You can see our HDRI map loaded. It's kind of like this cave type scene. And let's, if we want to turn off the grid, we can always do that by going show viewport down here to grid. Turn that off. And now let's turn back our Arnold render view. And now we're using the HDRI map. If you did want to turn that visibility off, you could go here to your AI sky dome light shape, go down to camera and scroll that down to 0. Now it's not going to show up here, but if you go to your render view, you're going to see that the background is not showing anymore. So now if we rotate this, turn play on, you'll see that our background is not showing. Now you'll see that we do have, we can turn this back on, but when we turn off our Arnold render, we don't have like really the best view of everything, of our geometry. It's more of like a silhouette. So you can always just go to like number 7. And what I did was I adjusted the depth of field on the camera. And you know, these ones like 3, 4 will show us a wireframe, 5 shaded, 7. But since I adjusted the camera, you can see the focal length and the depth of field. So if I go to view, select camera, select our perspective camera, and go down here to the perspective shape, you see here we can actually adjust a lot of attributes for our camera. And the depth of field can be adjusted here, focus distance here. And actually it's better practice to probably create a new camera. So we can always just create camera. And we have a new camera here, camera 1. Let's call this a render cam. And now if we go here to panels, perspective, now you'll see we have our perspective cam and our render cam. We can select our render cam and zoom out, and here's our render cam. Our turntable is still intact. Now you see the base, it's kind of swiveling on the base. Say if we did want to, you know, actually render this base with the right in, we could select our base and just remember, make it a child. So we can select our base, select the right and hit P, and now you'll see here in our outliner it's child and everything is moving together. So now remember spacebar. If we hit Control A, we'll kind of go back to our channel box editor. Spacebar will go to our 4 view, so we can actually look at how it's rotating at the top. If you wanted to like center this more, I mean it's pretty centered, but on the top view it's not. And remember, like right now, since this view, the render cam view is active, it rotates there. If I select this view, it'll rotate there, and this view will rotate there. And you see our cam is very centered, so it is fine. But you know, you can always create groups. Like I could select my cam, select my geometry. Control G will create a whole group out of all of those items. And you know, you could just move it all over so that it's centered, more centered, and you're not going to lose your animation. So if we did want to take this right in and so let's be sure that we're in our render cam view. Let's select the camera. Let's put Control A and go into our camera settings. Let's give it some depth of field. Change the f-stop. And unlike Blender, how they have that little picker, with Maya, unfortunately, the best way I think is to try to find, unless somebody knows of a better way, is to create measure tools distance tool. Look at our camera and set one marker there, set another marker to the right, and so we're about 8.86 centimeters. So if we go back to our camera, let's put in 8.86, and that'll give us the distance. And you can see kind of like now it's, I don't know if you can see that, but well, now I just moved the camera closer, but you can see it's getting more into focus now. Out of focus, into focus. So let's go here to our top view. Let's take this locator, and we want the locator like right there where the camera is. You could snap it. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. We take our second locator. I can't really see what's going on, so I'm gonna go to my wireframe view and then take this second locator and just move that to like right where that rooster's face is, kind of like in this region right here with the cat and the rooster, and about 6.05 centimeters. I can go here to my render cam view, and let's change that to 6 centimeters. Yeah, and we get a much better kind of view where it's getting blurred out in the back. Now, say this is what we want. We don't want to move this camera, and we want to keep this render cam just like it is. You can lock it. The easiest way to just quickly lock a camera is just you got to go up here to this lock camera icon right here and click it, and now we are locked. So if you try to rotate, you see that it's not going to let you, it's not going to let you zoom in. And you know, your turntable is still intact. But yeah, and if you want to look at the resolution of your camera. Like right now, we can't really see how is this rendering. If we want to actually look at our render settings, you quick way is just to go up here to our render settings, and you can see here these show up our this shows up our render settings. Like right now we're at an HT 540. You could change this to a full screen, to a 1080p, 4K, whatever you want. We'll get into rendering later, but for now, just know that we're basically at like 1080. So we'll do a 1080p. So if we go to our view and we go to our camera settings here, you can see here we have our resolution gate. I like to keep this on just so I know what I'm rendering at, and you can see up here in the top, like it'll tell us 1920 by 1080. So when I am rendering kind of more cinematic sequences, I also like to go to view, camera settings, and turn on my safe action, just so I kind of know where my action lives. But this will kind of give us like an idea of where our turntable is at. And you can see that this camera is locked and the lock icon is on. If we select our camera, you can see here also it's kind of grayed out. These numbers cannot be changed. It's because it's locked. Once we unlock it, then we can change it. But for now, let's just keep it locked. And this is actually a good way of kind of getting your nice angles of your model. So you can always go here too and create another camera. Let's call this render cam 2, and when you go to panels, perspective, render cam 2, we can, that this is unlocked, get another angle of our render. Say we want like a very up close personal angle, at this frame. Something like that. Try. So then we'll go to our view, camera settings, turn on our resolution gate. Let's lock this for now. And view, select camera, Control A, go back to our top view, and let's take that locator. We'll just use the same locator, move it to our second camera, which is much closer, and take the second locator. You can always turn on snapping here, and let's snap it right here. So we're at like a 3.84. It's good to look at these locators in perspective view because I'm way off. So I go down. So if we go from here to the rooster head, we're looking at like around 1.8. So if I go back to our render cam 2 and select this camera, let's try 1.8, 2, let's try 2.5, much better. So now that we're in focus there, let's take our f-stop down. Yeah. So if we do want to kind of keep this frame, say we like this render and we want to actually keep it as part of our one of the views that we want, you can't always just view select camera and set a keyframe there. It kind of just gives you a little reminder of like, hey, at frame 151, I like that angle. Go back to your render cam and find that angle that you like there. You know, could unlock it. I really like this one, say for example, and then you select camera, set a keyframe there. So what you're doing is you're kind of creating different angles of the model that you kind of want to show off or whatever. You can always set different cameras for these and render a turntable at the end. What I actually like to do kind of is like maybe with the perspective cam, always you could use the perspective cam to also use different angles that you like, and set keys on the perspective cam. So like, you know, you like this angle, you select camera S, let's go to frame 100, at this angle, kind of want to show from this angle. You select camera S, frame 200, I want to show like maybe from the side view. You select camera S, you know, down, and it kind of, you can always go through each keyframe, step back one key if you go down here and look at your different keys. You know, you can always animate these. You know, you could select all your keyframes, right click, go to your tangents and make them stepped. So now you kind of are showing it. And whenever you're ready to render, I mean, you can render the whole sequence if you want. Be sure on your render settings, when you do want to render, you can always go here to your format. You can actually, you know, go to a higher resolution if you want. You can go to your render settings and create like a higher quality render with your, we'll get more into render settings later. You know, for now, if you wanted to render this, you can always render it here. If you did want to actually render a frame range, right now you can see here it's under frame animation as a single frame, but you can also go to name.number.extension, and what that will do is it'll give you like whatever name you're putting this, say writing dot however many 001 your frame padding, you know, it'll tell you up here at the top .exr, and then here is where you set your start and end frame. So say I wanted to render from frame 1 to 200 or 1 to 490, you can put that in here, 1 to 200 by 1. So this is what kind of where you set it, and then you can also set your different render cameras. So say you just want to render your perspective for now, and when you're ready, you go to render sequence, and just be sure that your render settings are correct for where you want to output those files. When you do render your sequence, you can also alternatively put it in an alternative output location, and render, you can add it to the render view so that when you render everything out, it'll show up on your monitor. So this was just a basic overview of Maya. A lot of the concepts that I kind of went over today are applicable to other DCC packages. So if you also want to try this out in Blender or 3D Studio Max, all these concepts will still apply. The point is to try to get comfortable using 3D, try to bring in your model, light it, make a turntable out of it, get some nice shots out of it. If there's anything specific that you want to learn in Maya, please leave them in the comments below. I hope you learned something. See you next time.